Welcome back to another amazing episode of Celeb Village. There's an old saying, tragedy plus time equals comedy. But some tragedies leave wounds that never heal, and the death of iconic comedians, people who bring joy and laughter for a living, can leave those kinds of wounds. Too many great comics were lost in their prime of the career. Sam Kinison, for example, was taken from the world in a car wreck just weeks after he finally got sober and remarried. Many other comics also had issues with substance abuse. While some were able to overcome it, like Richard Pryor and George Carlin, others succumbed to the worst aspects of addiction. While still beloved by their fans, these comics lost their fight against addiction. Number 8. Phil Hartman. Although the SNL and Simpsons star never had a drug problem, he still battled addiction in his own way. His wife, Bryn, was a cocaine addict, and Hartman worked tirelessly to help her get clean, and at first he was successful. However, she eventually relapsed thanks to drugs that were supplied to her by another comedian, Andy Dick. One night, Bryn let the drugs get the worst of her, and she killed both Hartman and herself while their 2 children were sleeping. Hartman's friend John Lovitz has never forgiven Andy Dick for enabling Bryn, and the two hate each other to this day. According to the witnesses, one night the Laugh Factory Lovitz nearly beat Andy Dick to death after he joked about giving Bryn the drugs that caused her to kill Phil Hartman. Number 7. Lenny Bruce. Lenny Bruce is one of the most important stand-up comedians in history because he lost all of his money fighting for his right to freedom of speech. Bruce was constantly under attack for indecency with his routine, and when he lost everything in the courts, he turned to drugs and alcohol. He died from a morphine overdose in 1966. Although he lost his court battles, several comedians cited him as an influence for his fearless dedication to freedom of speech, especially comedians like George Carlin, who also faced several legal hurdles with his material. Number 6. Bill Hicks. The intensely political comedian was also an unapologetic smoker. He was rarely seen either on stage or on the street without a cigarette in his hand. Of course, we all know the dangers of smoking, so it's no shock that the comedian died incredibly young because of lung cancer. He joked about his smoking all the time, 2 backs a day, buddy, I go through 2 lighters a day. Number 5. Andy Cofer. Like Bill Hicks, the irreverent prankster Andy Cofer was a heavy chain smoker. As such, he succumbed to lung cancer in 1984, just a few years after the end of his iconic sitcom Taxi, in which he co-starred in with Danny DeVito and Back to the Future's Christopher Lloyd. Number 4. John Belushi. The original SNL cast member gave the world a plethora of iconic performances. Whether it was Bluto in Animal House, a role where he improvised most of the character's famous bits, or as Jake Blues from the Blues Brothers, Belushi left a lasting impression on comedy. Sadly, with fellow comedians Dan Aykroyd and Chevy Chase present, Belushi overdosed from a speedball, which is a dangerous drug combination when a user takes heroin and cocaine at the same time. Number 3. Greg Giraldo. Giraldo was beloved by Comedy Central fans for his appearances on several Comedy Central roasts. He also had intense high-energy stand-up routines about New York City, hookers, alcoholism, and political issues like healthcare. Unfortunately, that high energy might have just been a side effect of his cocaine addiction, which took his life in 2010. Number 2. Chris Farley. Few comedians' deaths have pulled more tears than the death of the SNL icon Chris Farley. Farley died of a heart attack after years of battling his eating disorder and alcoholism. The last person to see him alive was the sex worker he hired on the night of his death. Farley's friends Adam Sandler, David Spade, and other SNL alums pay tribute to the comedian whenever possible. For example, Adam Sandler played a touching tribute song to his fallen comical comrade when he hosted SNL for the first time since being fired. Number 1. Mitch Hedberg. Mitch Hedberg was a rising star in the late 1990s and early 2000s comedy scene. His stand-up had an old-school style where he just spat out one-liner after one-liner, but covered modern and relatable topics. Hedberg was almost added to the cast of That 70s Show, but producers cut his character after only 1 episode. Although fans loved him thanks to his Comedy Central specials, Hedberg succumbed to his heroin addiction in 2005. He's now considered by many to be one of the best comedians to have ever lived. That's all for today's video. I hope you liked it. Hit like if you did, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel.